Hello and welcome to all the Hillians out there. I'm Joe, here with me is my co-host Dan.
Hello and greetings.
And today we have another Hyrule in Focus video, which is always a blast. I really enjoy these videos. They're very long and they take a long time to edit, but they're fun. So here we go. We're continuing A Link to the Past, which will hopefully be far more successful a video than the previous Hyrule in Focus. I'm just saying, last one didn't do too. That being said, we have now arrived in the dungeon. Dun dun dun! Link rescues Zelda, who basically goes, "Oh, Link." Zelda reveals to Link she knows the castle has been overtaken by Aghanim, a powerful sorcerer. The said sorcerer has immensely strong magical powers and that he's mind controlling all the guards. Thus we find out that the guards are pretty weak-willed fools because, Star Wars explained it pretty well that the Force can wield powerful influence over the weak-minded. That aside, she reveals that she's very worried for her dad, whom we, the audience, know has already been killed, which is pretty sad because her dad apparently was a good king, but Aghanim doesn't like good kings. Zelda ends up saying, "I know a secret passage, but first we have to get to the first floor," which we got to bear in mind the first floor is infested with guards, so that's a risky proposition. What is more is that Zelda shows very little fear in charging forward into danger. On the other hand, I think she is afraid from what I've seen of some of the art, but I think it's a matter that for it, she has to take the leap of faith. Otherwise, she will die and the kingdom is doomed. She has an obligation. Right from the start, we find out she's a lady who values her duties and her kingdom over her own health. Link, for his part, having the spirit of courage in him, takes off, makes sure to guide her through the palace from the underground dungeons, from the underground prison up to the dungeon of the castle. Now, when I say dungeon, you got to bear in mind that traditionally the term dungeon did not mean like the prison cells. It meant the main keep of the castle, that is to say the main building. So he takes her there. We have Link who makes it all the way to the throne room where the space behind the thrones is revealed to be a shelf covering of sorts, needs to be moved aside and reveals a secret passage through which, and we find out that the royal family had this built in case of an emergency. I suspect that after the disaster of Ganondorf taking over the kingdom in Ocarina of Time, Zelda and her son, when they were rebuilding this castle, kind of thought, we need a back door, because last time there was no back door. We're going to need one, just in case. This shows a great deal of foresight on the part of the monarchy. What is more is that they've passed it down through the generations from parent to child. We also get a sense that in terms of educating their children on what to do, what not to do, and what to do in an emergency, this royal family is not stupid. They're very, very intelligent, far-sighted individuals. They're not like the royal family from Ocarina of Time. I'm not counting Zelda when I say that in that game. Zelda at 10 years old was smarter than her dad. Her dad was dumb. He trusted Ganondorf.
She saw Ganon for a minute and said, "I don't like him, something's off."
That aside, this monarchy, in Link to the Past, is smart. They understood how the previous royal family fell and decided we need our secret passages.
We need to learn from that.
The enemy has employed some of the secret passages and infested some of them with guards. But on the other hand, they kept a back door. It cannot be overstated enough just how smart that is. It means they kept an eye on their history books and went, this kind of bit us in the rear the last time. Let's not make the same mistake next time. But we're not going to make the same ones. To be honest, it doesn't seem like this Zelda or her father really made almost any mistakes this time around. The king was not expecting a sorcerer to just march into the palace, kill him, and take control of all the guards, and imprison his daughter and the 7 maidens. To be quite honest, I don't really blame him for making that mistake. It seems to me like, who could have predicted some guy would just march into the palace and just start killing people? That said, Link slips behind the castle walls through a secret passage, and now he's escaping from the castle for another secret passage. This place has so many secret passages, it ain't even funny. And yet, it's interesting how the royal family seems very concerned for their own safety. Looking at their history, it seems like they're always the main target by Ganon. And I think they realized it and said, okay, we're not falling for the same dirty tricks a second time. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. That said, the very fact that the princess knows the secret passages is pretty cool, because it means they're passing it down to their children before their children even succeed to the throne. Zelda does not have the physical might to reveal the passage herself, so relies on Link to do the muscle work. Once they get down into the tunnels, though, they discover that the place is infested with bugs, bats, and snakes. And also, real quick, the snake assets are later to be reused in Earth
found.
I noticed. So they're being attacked also by Gigas.
This is no ordinary threat.
If they'll need Ness to come to the rescue. Ness and his friends. But that said, cuts his way through the secret
Passages.
to get Zelda out. In the hero's journey, the hero has to tread into great dark hole of sorts, eventually, after the encounter of the goddess. With Zelda being the reincarnation of Hylia, you have the dark
Tunnels.
It's pretty clear, looking at this from the hero's journey point of view.
Yeah, it's following the hero's journey to the letter.
The secret passage
Is just
plain annoying, because the enemies just keep coming at you.
upon arrival.
In the cathedral, Link finds out that, well, for one thing, the castle was linked there through secret passage, which is pretty crafty on the part of the royal family. Sorry if I keep heaping praise on that. I just think the secret passage to the church, which is pretty far away from the castle, is a pretty clever and smart thing to do.
The church can easily give them supplies so that they could flee elsewhere.
And try to rally the kingdom. Trouble is, Zelda's not really in a position to do that, so it falls on Link. That said, the priest is primarily
Concerned with
getting their mitts on the Master Sword because he can sense that there's something greater than Aghanim that is threatening the kingdom. Spoiler alert, happens to be Ganon. Link has to go,
find where the Master Sword is.
but he has to seek out the village elder of the local town before that, because the village elder is descended.
From one of the 7 sages, or wise men.
The priest then promises to hide Princess Zelda.
I had to try to say it in the Zap Brannigan voice.
I know, it makes it sound wrong. Actually, no, there's nothing sleazy about the priest here, but
He's gonna hide Zelda.
probably as a nun or something, which would be the natural way to go, because nuns will be noticed far less than any other person, because historically, nobody really looked twice at a nun. Thematically, this is plunging into the belly of the beast and coming out the other side.
In classic literature, this is a reference to when Percival visits the Kingfisher's castle.
Catches sight of the Holy Grail from a distance. On the other hand, it can easily be taken as commentary on baptism to an extent. You are treading into darkness, and then you come out of the darkness and into a place of great light.
Whereupon you are received by the faithful, or in medieval terms, in knighting ceremonies, and sent off on a knightly quest. In Norse mythology, one could look at the story when Othin turns into a worm and proceeds through a hole and into the chamber of the giantess guarding the mead of poetry. It must never be forgotten that Zelda derives a lot of inspiration not only from Asian religions like Buddhism and Shintoism, but also from medieval literature from the West.
Of Hyrule thing, we have to bear in mind Zelda itself is forged in a crucible of Shinto Buddhist art, because
Those are the religions of Japan, and thus the mode through which they think
the notion of the Christian knight is something that
remains fairly consistent throughout Zelda
Zelda is a series that's truly East meets West.
in a lot of ways.
You have, in this case, a knight being
Knighted and sent off.
in the same way that
One might have seen Gawain sent off on a quest, because
Link archetypally is pretty much the same type of figure as Gawain or Percival. He is the warrior
archetype.
and more than that, the heroic
Knight who serves the Lady Fair,
and is sworn to the ideals of chivalry.
and against him are arrayed the forces of evil and darkness, who serve Ganon.
The knightly duties is very important traditionally in the Zelda series.
And we get in of arrival into the cathedral a bit of a confirmation of the 3 great vows of knighthood that I've seen on some websites and in some literature. You have an oath to a lady, protect orphans and ladies, and serve them. You have an oath to God, that is to say, the cathedral there, that's God's home on earth, so to speak, at least in traditional thought. And you have the oath to the monarchy.
Your king.
Or in this case, the princess, since there is no king, / the kingdom.
Now that I think about it, so these 3.5 vows are all combined into this one scene where Link has to swear to go save the kingdom, and the only way to do that is to go fetch the Master Sword. In traditional Japanese thought, the sword was his soul to an extent. The katana, and before that the bow and arrows of a samurai, were sacred to the bushi, just as the sword and the lance were for the knight in Western Europe.
Along with his steed.
Thus, on the Japanese side of things, he has to go fetch the sword that is his soul. But on the Western side of things, this is essentially Excalibur.
So he has to prove himself the true hero of
Hyrule by seeking out information and knowledge about the Master Sword ere he could pull it out from the stone into which it has been shoved into. Thus, he is to follow in the footsteps of King Arthur.
So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button as though you were Link taking down Ganon.